So, a lot of new faces today, which is good. A lot of old faces as well. So, there are a couple of us that were helping out with our vacation Bible study this week. So let's give a hand of applause to Pastor Hui, the volunteers, the students. If I had thought properly, I would have shown some pictures right now, but I didn't think properly. But we had about around 45 kids every day. It was actually bigger last year. There were about 60 kids last year, but regardless, this is actually a pretty small space for 45 kids, and we had like close to 20 volunteers. So it was a pretty good ratio, and I think a lot of the kids really enjoyed it. I actually encouraged a lot of our pastors to send their kids, namely so that their wives could have a break. And then they're like, well, my kids don't understand English. I'm like, your wife needs a break. And then I saw some of the wives, and I was like, so how was it? They're like, you love it. But anyway, actually I did hear a lot of those kids, even if they had difficulty understanding, they were encouraged, they were blessed. Particularly they liked the things that they could buy, so they always showed that off. But I'm sure many of them are probably downstairs, so afterwards, especially for those that helped out with the VBS, once we finish down here, you can probably see some of the kids downstairs afterwards. Regardless, one other quick thing too, Sam and Soma, I don't know if everybody knows them, but Sam is the New Zealander, and Soma is the Mongolian sister. They just gave birth, I think this past Wednesday. Again, if I had thought ahead, I would put pictures up, but I didn't. But regardless, we have a new child in our ministry, and we have another one coming in about a month and a half. But regardless, God has been faithful, and yes, there are many children being born, and apparently many people getting married. With that, let's go ahead and start for today. So let me pray for us again, and let's get into the Word. Father, we thank you. We praise you. We just pray that we would enjoy this time together in your Word, and that you would encourage us and challenge us today. We thank you and we praise you in the name of Jesus. Amen. Okay. So, let me go to the screen, please. So we are continuing in our series in the book of Judges. We're almost done because we're not going to finish the whole book of Judges. We're actually going to finish in chapter 16. So next week we'll be finishing what we're going through, and then probably the week after I'll do kind of a wrap-up summary of the entire book and kind of what God has shown us through that. Regardless, we're in chapter 15 of the book of Judges, and the question I wanted to start with today, because it's called vengeance, right? Today's sermon is called vengeance. So how do you respond when someone does something that's very hurtful to you, right? Does anyone seek revenge? I know you guys aren't going to raise your hand. Because if you do, people will be like, I'm going to stay away from that person. But naturally, what are the types of responses we have when someone does something hurtful to us? Go ahead and throw some of them out. What do you do? Nothing? I'm hearing some very slight murmurs. Anyone want to be brave? Speak out a little bit?
Cut ties with them.
Cut ties with them. Oh, that's an interesting one. So Yas is the one who will turn her back. So that's a natural defense, is to just cut them out. Right? And so some people do that. What else? What are some other responses when someone does something hurtful to you?
Try to stay away from them.
Okay, so avoiding them. Similar to cutting ties, but a little bit different. So you're just kind of avoiding them. You're avoiding like any type of confrontation or interaction. What else? Confront. Okay, so we do have some alphas here. So when you confront, you're like, hey, I have a problem with this and this and this, right? So some of us have more of a confrontational, personality, where when someone does harm to us, we want to, just confront and resolve that issue right away. Right? Anything else?
Try to forgive.
Wait, try to forgive. Who said that? Oh, okay. We got a holy guy back there. So, that is the Christian thing to do, right? Is as Christ has forgiven us, is to try to do so unto others, right? I've told you that story before about how I grew up watching those Christian films when I was in Baptist private school, and the little kid read the verse about when you get stricken on the cheek, you turn the other cheek, and in that film, this bully smacks him, and he's like. and the bully's like, what? And he hits him again. So it's not an easy thing, right? It's not an easy thing to respond in a Christ-like way when hurtful things happen to us. Regardless, keep that in the back of your mind as we go through this text, because as I've been saying through the book of Judges, what is being shown to us is not what we're supposed to do, okay? I don't want any of you taking notes on, okay, I'm going to be like Samson. And these are the things that I need to do to be like Samson. All right, anyway, let's get to the passage, Judges 15, the entire chapter, starting with verse 1. Open up your Bible, smartphones, or look at the screen, Judges 15, starting from verse 1, where the Lord says this. Later on, at the time of wheat harvest, Samson took a young goat and went to visit his wife. He said, I'm going to my wife's room. But her father would not let him go. I was so sure you hated her, he said, that I gave her to your companion. Isn't her younger sister more attractive? Take her instead. Samson said to them, this time I have the right to get even with Philistines. I have really harmed them. I'm trying to give him more of a manly voice. But anyway. So he went out and caught 300 foxes and tied them tail to tail in pairs. He then fastened a torch to each pair of tails, lit the torches, and let the foxes loose in the standing grain of the Philistines. He burned up the shocks and standing grain together with the vineyards and olive groves. When the Philistines asked, who did this? They were told, Samson, the Timnite son-in-law, because his wife was given to his companion. So the Philistines went up and burned her and her father to death. Samson said to them, since you acted like this, okay, I'll stop. I swear that I won't stop until I get my revenge on you. He attacked them viciously and slaughtered many of them. Then he went down and stayed in a cave in the rock of Etam. The Philistines went up and camped in Judah, spreading out near Lehi. The people of Judah asked, why have you come to fight us? We have come to take Samson prisoner, they answered, to do to him as he did to us. Then 3,000 men from Judah went down to the cave in the rock of Etam and said to Samson, don't you realize that the Philistines are rulers over us? What have you done to us? He answered, I merely did to them what they did to me. They said to him, we've come to tie you up and hand you over to the Philistines. Samson said, swear to me that you won't kill me yourselves. Agreed, they answered. We will only tie you up and hand you over to them. We will not kill you. So they bound him with 2 new ropes and led him up from the rock. As he approached Lehi, the Philistines came toward him, shouting. The Spirit of the Lord came powerfully upon him. The ropes on his arm became like charred flax, and the bindings dropped from his hands. Finding a fresh jawbone of a donkey, he grabbed it and struck down 1,000 men. Then Samson said, with the donkey's jawbone I have made donkeys of them. With the donkey's jawbone I have killed 1,000 men. When he finished speaking, he threw away the jawbone, and the place was called Ramath Lehi. Because he was very thirsty, he cried out to the Lord, you have given your servant this great victory. Must I now die of thirst and fall into the hands of the uncircumcised? Then God opened up the hollow place in Lehi, and water came up out of it. When Samson drank, his strength returned, and he revived. So the spring was called En-Hakkore, and it is still there in Lehi. Samson led Israel for 20 years in the days of the Philistines. Okay, interesting text. Again, our theme for this year is Emmanuel, which means God with us through the wilderness. And actually, a very interesting thing, the VBS actually had a very similar theme, where it always ended with God is with you. So it's like when things change, God is with you. When hardship happens, God is with you. When you're afraid, God is with you. So it's kind of interesting as we were doing the VBS. I was like, wow, God's lining up our themes. I was getting ministered to. I don't know if the children really understood it. But again, our theme for this year is that regardless of what you're going through, whether it is a difficult season or a season of joy, that you would get a better understanding of God's presence with you here and now. And so our hope is that we would have a better understanding of that. Just to give you a little of a preview, as we finish the book of Judges, we're actually going to go into the book of Ephesians. And through the book of Ephesians, I'm hoping that we can see, now that we understand God is with us, so what are we supposed to do? Okay? Again, for the book of Judges, we have seen this endless cycle of people that keep falling away from God. The Israelites, God has done amazing things to them. He has brought them into the promised land. He has done these crazy things through Moses as well as through Joshua. But now that leadership has passed, and now they are disunified, and they keep falling away from God. And yet, every time they fall away, opposition comes in. Outsiders come in and take over. But God raises up a judge. God raises up a leader that brings them to freedom once again and gives them peace. But then after some time, they fall away from the Lord, and the cycle repeats itself. This has been happening again and again and again. And this is the final cycle that we are looking at right now with the story of Samson. And as we saw last week, Samson was kind of this miracle baby, right? He was born to a woman that could not give children. An angel of the Lord came and said, "You are going to have a child, and you will give this child unto the Lord with a Nazirite vow. And this child will be filled with the Holy Spirit." And so there's this expectation that Samson is going to be Superman, right? That again, I'm a comic book nerd, so Kal-El, the son of Jor-El, will come and will free these people and will do amazing things. That's what you expect. But what we saw last week was Samson is a big disappointment. He desires to do all the wrong things, and this Nazirite vow that he has been submitted unto, he keeps breaking, right? He touches this dead carcass of a lion, and he eats honey that's inside of it. He does everything wrong. He marries this Philistine woman, and basically you're just disappointed. You're like, wow, this guy was supposed to be awesome, but he's horrible. And as we continue the story, you see he's even worse than you think. Okay? So as we go through this, Samson comes back. So Samson had gotten married, and then he decided for fun to give this stupid, ridiculous riddle that no one could answer. And so they pry it out of his wife, who pries it out of him, and he gets angry. And so the bet was he had to provide 30 sets of clothing. And so he goes and he kills 30 random people to bring their clothing, and he gives it to them, and he storms off angry. So everyone expects that he did not want to marry this woman, that he's so upset. But when we see the beginning of this passage, Samson was like, that's still my wife. And so he comes back. So back in the Philistine wedding, for you to marry a Philistine woman, the wife would actually stay at home. And then you could go visit her whenever you wanted. That's kind of how it worked back then. And so Samson comes back to this house expecting that everything's going to be nice and fine. And he comes with a young goat, so he comes bearing gifts. And then he finds out that his wife has been married to somebody else, right? He's not happy. And so his father-in-law comes out, he's like, okay, calm down. I didn't know, I married her to one of those guys you were with. But you know what? Her younger sister's prettier. It's okay, right? But Samson is not happy about this. And so Samson decides to do something. Samson is angry, right? I kind of wanted Samson to kind of sound like, like the Incredible Hulk. He's like, Hulk smash, like Samson smash. Right? So Samson, something bad happens to him, and he wants to do something. So one of the things I want you to understand, last chapter, one of the themes that kept happening was, they kept saying Samson went down. Samson went down. I focused on that last week. This week, the theme of this chapter is that every time something happens to Samson, he acts. He does something. Right? You can't really see this because in the English it doesn't really translate as well, but in the Hebrew, the verb to do continues to be repeated again and again. Right? Like in Korean it would be like hata, right? So 계속 하고 있어요. So he's constantly doing something. So there is action, 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 action. So keep that in the back of your heads. Samson acts. Okay? So Samson acts by destroying an entire season of crops. So he burns up not only the crops that were in bloom, but he burns up the crops that still hadn't sprouted yet. And he does it through these foxes. Right? He grabs 300 foxes, ties their tails together, sticks a torch on it, and he sends them in all the different directions, and they burn up everything. I wrote guerrilla warfare because I was trying to explain that Samson fights dirty. Samson doesn't do things in a proper way. Now, I say this also understanding that, as an American citizen, the reason why America is free, there's supposed to be another bird today, unfortunately she's not here, but the reason why America was free was why? You guys know? Americans fought dirty. Americans used what was called guerrilla warfare as well. They would, so back during the Revolutionary War, war was kind of a gentleman's sport. And so the British, if you understand how they were, you know, the red coats and like the hat and everything, they would line up and they would just march in line and they would like get in position and they would fire. It was like a video game, right? They acted like robots. But the Americans were like, we're not going to just stand here. We're gonna hide behind the trees. We're gonna wear camouflage. We're gonna ambush you. And so the Americans were the guerrillas, and that's why we won freedom. Anyway, so Samson fights dirty. He uses these foxes to destroy everything that is in this place, all the food, and of course they get angry. So how do they get back at him? They don't get back at him. They're like, okay, this is because of the father-in-law, so we're going to kill the father-in-law and kill the daughter, right? Philistines are really messed up people, by the way. like seriously, like this is how you respond to something like this, is you kill everybody. But regardless, unfortunately, Samson responds, he acts by getting angry, Samson angry, and he goes off and kills a bunch of people. We don't know how many. But again, Samson, whenever something happens to him that he doesn't like, he does something harmful. He does something hurtful. And this is the second time he's done it in this chapter alone. So the Philistines, again, the interesting thing with the Philistines is they never go directly to Samson because they're afraid of him. First they went to they went to the father-in-law. Now they're going to the tribe of Judah. So if the Philistines go to the tribe of Judah, they come with all these soldiers, and Judah's like, why are you trying to attack us? Why are you fighting us? And they say, we want Samson, because we want to do to him what he did to us. So Judah, which is unfortunate, if you guys remember chapter 1, Judah they were the heroes of chapter 1, right? You remember chapter 1, Joshua is passing away, and the people of Israel are supposed to finish what they started. They were supposed to finish conquering the promised land. And in chapter 1, Judah accomplishes many things. They were the heroes of the story. But now what we see here is, rather than understanding that Samson was God's instrument against the Philistines, they turn on Samson. And they say, you know what? The Philistines are our rulers. You shouldn't have done this. So we're going to take you to the Philistines. What they should have done, brothers and sisters, they should have recognized this is an amazing man that God has raised up. This is our opportunity to fight back and to win back the freedom that we deserve. But instead, Judah, the tribe of Judah, was content with how things were. They were okay with the Philistines ruling over them. They even claimed, or they even proclaimed to Samson that these are our rulers. What is wrong with you? This is a sad story, brothers and sisters. In chapter 1, they were the ones that were ready to fight, that were ready to conquer for the Lord. And now, rather than wanting to fight back, they are turning their own countrymen over so that there won't be any harm to them. This is a complete turnaround in 15 chapters. And so, I don't know how many of you guys watch Black Panther or Infinity War. I'm sorry, I'm a comic book guy. But when I read the phrase, like, they take him and he's bound up, and then the Philistines come shouting toward him, I just imagine just like the Jabari, like, oh, 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 like they're coming at him. I don't know, I'm sorry, Wakanda forever, but the funny thing is, while we were preparing for VBS, one of the kids was helping with decorations, and the whole time he's talking about Marvel Comics, right? Marvel Cinematic Universe, and he's explaining every single character, every single story. And so I go up to him and I said, people, when those comic books came out, nobody liked them. I was one of those people. I used to read comic books. I was not popular. He said, what? And he kept going on. And he kept talking about these Marvel comics. But regardless, it's funny how things change, right? Because I look at everything that's popular right now. This is the stuff I was into like 20 years ago. I was ahead of my time. That's all I'm saying. I was ahead of my time. Anyway, we need to move away from it. So the Philistines come shouting, and then the passage says, the Spirit of the Lord came powerfully upon him. And all of a sudden, if you read the way Scripture is written here, most of us envision when the Spirit of the Lord comes, all of a sudden Samson is like, he's just powerful and he's ripping things off and he's killing people. But the way it's written is that the ropes that were binding him just kind of magically fall off. It wasn't Samson that broke those bonds, it was the Spirit of the Lord. And these ropes just fall off like charred, flax that it says. And then Samson is filled with the Holy Spirit, and he kills 1,000 men with a donkey jawbone. Right? Kind of a gruesome picture. But if you guys remember, Shamgar, one of the earlier judges, he killed like 300 men with the ox goad. And so it's following this theme that God did amazing things through the Holy Spirit, through these men, by empowering them to do things that were impossible. And so Samson, through the Holy Spirit, does the impossible. He conquers the Philistines. And then he gives this little soliloquy, right? With the donkey's jawbone, I have made donkeys of them. I think in the Hebrew it's like, I have made heaps of them. Heap is actually sounds the same as the word donkey. With the donkey's jawbone, I have killed 1,000 men. And so the sad thing about this story, or the sad thing about the soliloquy, is that Samson, after he has done this amazing thing, he thinks he did it, right? He is proclaiming, I am the one who conquered 1,000 men with a donkey's jawbone. I am the one who is mighty. And then he gives this cry me a river story to God. You let me win, and now I'm going to die of thirst. Wham, 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 right? And then I'm going to be conquered by these uncircumcised people, right? He's like, if he was Korean, he'd be like, Mungmaru. He's crying unto God, saying that he is thirsty. And it is like the most ridiculous request, but amazingly God answers. Right? God opens up a spring and water starts coming out. And so in my spiritual imagination, I imagine Samson saying this not expecting an answer. Right? Samson has been saying, I, and then all of a sudden he's like, I'm thirsty. Right? And then this water comes out. In my spiritual imagination, I'm like, whoa. What's going on? What is this? I guess God listens. I guess God answers. I personally don't think he was expecting this. But God answers and shows that Samson is his instrument to defeat the Philistines. And the passage ends with this verse where it says, Samson led Israel for 20 years in the days of the Philistines. Now, if you guys know the book of Judges, this is basically the final verse of every single judge. So-and-so, Gideon led Israel for 40 years, and there was peace, blah, blah, blah. And so this is basically the final verse that you would see in all these stories of the judges. But when you look at this, does it seem like the man Samson is leading his people? No. Samson is one man doing whatever he wants, and basically he has a grudge. He is angry at the Philistines, and he is acting in his own benefit toward his own, beliefs. He is not doing these things because he wants to save Israel. Israel for 20 years. Now, in all the other stories, all the other judges, it was very clear that that person became a leader and a ruler of the people. And people listened, people obeyed. There were armies, there was organization, there was structure. But here you have one man doing whatever he wants. But through this one man, God is giving freedom to his people. So basically what we are seeing is this is the most unlikely a source of encouragement. This is the most unworthy person character-wise, but even so, he is filled with the Holy Spirit and able to do amazing things, and God is using him to free a people that have not even asked to be freed. One of the things I wanted to remind you guys is, in this particular cycle, Israel did not cry out for help. In all the other cycles, Israel cried out to God and said, God, give us freedom, send someone. And in this story, Israel never asked for help. They were content by being subjugated to the rule of the Philistines. They were fine with it, as we saw before. Judah had an opportunity where they could have risen up and fought with Samson, but instead they turned Samson over and they said, you know what, the Philistines are our rulers, how dare you? And so God used Samson, and basically God allowed Samson to marry a Philistine woman, have an issue happen in this marriage, and get angry at the Philistines and desire revenge against them. God used all of this to save his people. Samson never desired to do this of his own accord. Samson had no desire to lift up Israel on his own. But God still used him. As flawed, as messed up a person as he is, God used him to save his people. Now the song we sang earlier, the second song, Reckless Love, it's a popular song right now, and it's actually with controversy because a lot of people are like, how can God be reckless? Like, how dare you call God reckless? I think, who was it? I think John Piper even, even wrote about it, saying that, theologically it was incorrect. But basically, the reason why I particularly like that song and I wanted to sing it today is because what that song speaks to is that God pursues us. God relentlessly pursues us. That song, by saying God's love is reckless, is not saying that God is reckless, but from a human perspective, when we see the types of things that God does out of love for us, we would think that is reckless. We would think that is unreasonable. Why would someone do things like that? Why would someone act in such a way for someone like me? From that perspective, yes, you can say God's love is reckless, even though it actually isn't. And one of the things I like about that song is it starts to touch upon some of these things. And I think one of the most important areas to look at is Luke 15, when it goes through the different stories of the shepherd that leaves the 99 for his lost sheep, or the woman who searches her house all day to find that one coin out of 9 or out of 10, or the story with the prodigal son, where 1 out of 2 sons falls away, and the father runs to him when he sees him coming from far away. Right? What those particular stories show us in the New Testament is that God is a pursuing God. And I think this is one of the things that this particular chapter shows us. Israel does not want God's help. Israel is happy the way things are, but they are falling further and further away from God, and God is not content with that. So he raises up this horrible man, but he still uses him, and he uses him in an amazing way to rescue his people, because God will not stop pursuing us. He will not give up on us. This is one of the things I really want us to really take to heart today. Is that no matter how far away any one of us may fall, or no matter how much any one of us might doubt, or no matter what difficult things happen which cause us to get angry and frustrated at God, God will never stop pursuing you. He will always reach out to you, even through the most unconventional means and ways. God will never give up. He will even use someone like Samson. He will reach out to people that don't ask him to. Now, one of the other things I want us to take from this too is that when we choose to react, which is what Samson was doing, whenever something happened to Samson, something happened that hurt him, something that made him angry, he acted, he reacted, he did something, right? And brothers and sisters, the reason why I asked us that question in the beginning of what do you do when someone does something hurtful to you is, I think for many of us, we act. And I think for some of us, we do stupid things. And a lot of times, those stupid things build up, right? And it's funny, because you look at that passage, and the Philistines are like, we want to do to him what he did to us. And he's like, I want to do to them, or I just did to them what they did to me, right? There's this do, right? And as I said before, whenever we're in situations where rather than going to God, asking for his help and seeking upon him, whenever we do, we act, we do this, we do that, we do this, do, all we're left is with do, right? That is basically what happens. When all we do is do, we are only left with do. The sermon today is called Vengeance, but as we saw before, and actually this is interesting because just a few chapters earlier with Gideon, the story of Gideon, Gideon also acts out of revenge. And in that passage, or when we went through that passage, I mentioned that we are supposed to leave vengeance to the Lord. Now there are times when God desires us to act, yes, but for the most part, vengeance is not ours to seek. So rather than getting caught in the cycle of doing harmful things to others, stop it. Don't react. Trust in God. If anything, if you are going to react, act in love. That's how you really mess up people. They do something mean to you, and you do something loving to them. They don't know what to do. It's like, what? I love you, man. What? I just did something horrible to you. Doesn't matter, man. I love you, man. It's like when you do that, that's how you mess up the cycle. Because they can't respond. At least not in hate. Maybe confusion. But when we act, we do, all we're left is with do. Continue on. So what we see is with Judah had a opportunity to step up. Unfortunately, this entire group of people lets us down. Right? And last week we saw, I mentioned that there are times when there are individuals that let us down. We are disappointed in individuals. Let me make a blanket statement. It goes beyond just individuals. There are entire people groups that will let you down. That is a reality. And I'll refer you back to my quote from 1998, people self-trust God. People can be plural, okay? People can be plural. So as such, you will be disappointed not just by individuals, but whole people groups. That's the reality of life. But God will never fail you. God will always be trustworthy. So brothers and sisters, what I really want us to focus on today is to end the cycle of reaction, but instead to be able to recognize when God is doing something in our lives. What Judah, the tribe of Judah, could not recognize was that God was raising up this man Samson to free them. Instead of them responding positively, they add to the situation by turning him over. Brothers and sisters, when we are constantly reacting to the things that are going on in our lives, that makes us blind to what God is actually doing. And so, brothers and sisters, I want us to take a moment to just see God is at work. As I've been saying for this whole year, is God is present among us. He is doing amazing things, and He can do them through the most unusual people, unworthy people. Now I'm going to take a step back. My country's president, Mr. Trump, about a little bit more than a year ago, I was very concerned. I was never really happy, but I would have been unhappy whether it was him or Clinton. Honestly, it didn't really matter. I was going to be unhappy, and that's just me. I can be an unhappy person. But regardless, about a year, like a little bit more than a year ago, when him and Kim Jong-un were basically like pulling out their missiles, I was like, okay, what is going on? This is getting ridiculous. This is getting crazy. And honestly, I am taking everything with a grain of salt that is going on right now. But like these things with the summit, with them actually like hanging out, and the people are like, yeah, Kim Jong-un's a good guy, he's pretty cool. And like, you know, they're like hanging out, yeah, he can go to the White House anytime. Like, you know, like it's a stark difference from a year ago. And just like Samson, maybe sometimes God can do the amazing things through someone who's not an amazing person, right? I don't know. I'm still skeptical. But at the same time, I will say that things have changed drastically in about a year in terms of this whole North Korea situation. Now, we still need to pray about it. We still need to be good stewards of what God is doing. But at the same time, I do think sometimes we have to recognize that God can do the amazing even through unworthy vessels. And when He does, we need to give Him the praise and glory and honor. With that, let's take some time to pray and we'll close for tonight. Let's take a moment to ask God to help us to calm our hearts, that if there are difficult situations that you're going through, that rather than reacting to them, rather than fighting back or whatever it is, let's just pray that God would give us peace and that He would just help us to respond in the right way, and that we would trust Him through whatever situation we're in. Let's take some time to pray that God would help us to stop reacting, but to trust in Him. Let's pray. To us the things that He's doing in our lives, that we would not be ignorant of the things that God is doing, that He is at work in our lives, that He is present. So take some time to just pray for God to reveal to us the things that He's doing in our lives among us right now. Let's pray. He's done, there's really not much for us to do. And so Father, I pray, Lord, that we would not get stuck in the cycle of reacting to the things that are going on among us, Lord. That we would trust in You. That we would see, Lord, where You are at work in our lives. That we would be able to respond, Lord, in faith and to recognize, Lord, that You are doing amazing things. And that we would trust You. And that we would seek to obey. That we would seek to love rather than hate those among us, Lord. Encourage us in that way and help us to know, Lord, that as You pursue us, as You've never given up on us, Lord, help us to seek out, Lord, to do the same to others as well.